Welcome back to From the South. I am Luis de Jesus from the Telesur studios in Caracas, Venezuela. Let's take a look at our headlines. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro announces the country will participate in the Russian vaccination program of Sputnik V. Anti-racism protests were met with heavy police repression in the U.S. Capitol. And Sudan's main rebel alliance has agreed on a peace deal with the government aimed at ending 17 years of conflict. Stay with us. We start right away with the news. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro announced on Sunday that the country is searching for volunteers to apply the Russian vaccine against COVID-19, Sputnik V. Maduro also said that the Cuban vaccine Sovereign 01 will be coordinated with the states members of the Bolivarian Alliance for Peoples, the ALBA TCP, to guarantee its application in the region.
This week, there was a very important meeting between Dr. Carlos Alvarado, Minister of People's Power for Health, and the Committee of Russian Scientists who is taking forward a Sputnik V vaccine. Subsequently, Venezuela joins the Russian vaccine. In the coming days, we will ask for the volunteers needed to get the vaccine and participate for Venezuela in Phase 3 of Sputnik V. We are articulated to the Soberana 01 vaccine of Cuba and to all the effort because we decided at the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of our America, a vaccine for the bloc.
And the Venezuelan president also announced that more than 8,000 new health professionals from Cuba have joined the Bolivarian country in the fight against COVID-19.
I saw the incorporation of Cuban doctors yesterday on the capital sector of 23 de Enero. More than 1,000 new Cuban doctors are arriving in the country, and they are working directly in the communities.
As a matter of fact, Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, reported 922 new cases of contagion to COVID-19, of which 97 are imported, while reporting 6 deaths in relation to the virus.
Today, we must report, President, that in the last 24 hours in Venezuela, 825 cases of community transmission have been registered throughout the national territory.
And meanwhile, President Maduro highlighted the importance of the dialogue with opposition blocs as he stressed the need to support the steps taken by the National Electoral Council to extend guarantees and build a climate of confidence in the upcoming parliamentary elections in December.
I believe more and more that the means for Venezuela to settle difference must be dialogue, understanding, agreement, democracy, popular vote, participation. Therefore, I fully agree with the steps being taken in the National Electoral Council to expand electoral, political, and institutional guarantees.
In other news, Jamaica's 2020 leadership debate has ended with Prime Minister Andrew Holness and opposition leader Dr. Peter Phillips clashing over a range of topics, especially in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. Holness, who leads the Jamaica Labour Party, defended his government's performance, citing achievements such as the creation of over 100,000 jobs and 22,000 Jamaicans gaining home ownership. Meanwhile, opposition leader from the People's National Party, Phillips, questioned Holmes' decision to call the general election amid the health crisis. The Prime Minister defended his decision, stating that Jamaicans must learn to live with COVID-19 as the virus will persist until a vaccine is developed. He said that delaying the elections would be unconstitutional.
We would never do anything to place the lives of the Jamaican people at risk. The pandemic will only end when there is a safe and widely distributed vaccine. This may be between 1.5 to 2 years, according to some experts. This would be well outside of the constitutional limits to call an election.
I think the most disturbing thing about the recent handling of the spike in cases is the disregard that has been given to the scientific advice of the medical personnel. In the period of the Emancipendence celebrations, the recommendation was made that there should be a tightening of the arrangements, the curfew arrangements and the other arrangements. That was ignored. The consequence has been devastating on the people of Jamaica.
On the eve of the country's 58th independence, Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister called for unity amid racial division on social media following the country's August 10th general election.
Unfortunately, during the last election campaign, there were some unfortunate advertising missteps, followed by crass and acrimonious racial social media postings. Some persons flippantly dismissed those comments as just blips on the national landscape. But in reality, those persons who perpetrated any or all of it were aiming at the racial fault lines in our society. Their intention was to promote panic, fear, and stimulate the hatred which have created racial animosity and grievous harm, as has happened in other societies. There are appeals in some quarters for these comments to be checked, and they must end. I appeal for a return to sanctity of respect for each other and the aspirational tolerance which Dr. Williams identified.
And also in Trinidad and Tobago, from Monday, nationals must wear masks in public to curb the spread of COVID-19 or they will be fined. Prime Minister Dr. Kate Rowley announced on Saturday that the Parliament will vote on the Public Health Amendment Bill. The legislation seeks to make it an offense to be caught not wearing a mask in public. The Prime Minister added that the public health ordinance will remain in effect for the next 14 days and that the government will increase the number of exceptions granted to nationals returning to the country.
The wearing of masks should be mandatory, so between now and Monday, please get your masks and be able to cooperate, and if you have them, be wearing them from now. If you have been wearing them, continue to wear them. If you have not been wearing them and you have not got yourself supplied, you have until Monday, because without a mask, you'd be required to stay home.
And Colombia has reported more than 607,000 coronavirus confirmed cases. The Ministry of Health reported on Sunday 8,024 new cases. Meanwhile, the country has reached 19,364 dead by COVID-19. The world surpassed 25 million contagions in more than 843,000 deaths since the virus began to spread. And with this, we go to a first short break. Stay with us and follow us in Twitter at Telesur English and Luis Telesur. We'll be right back. Anti-racism protests were met with heavy police repression on Saturday night in the U.S. Capitol. The police reportedly fired tear gas, canisters, stun grenades, and rubber bullets at the protesters in Washington, D.C., leaving dozens injured. Ongoing demonstrations against racism and police brutality in the U.S. have also been met with counter-protests from the far right, including armed extremists who have opened fire on protesters. For his part, President Donald Trump has referred to the anti-racism protests as a disgrace and has continuously called on his base to oppose demobilizations. And in Portland, one person was shot dead following clashes between Black Lives Matter protesters and far-right groups marching in support of President Trump. According to the police, the far-right groups arrived in a caravan of hundreds of cars before the clashes broke out. Protesters gathered in London on Sunday for the Million People March, which was held in place of the annual Notting Hill Carnival. The march was held in support of the Black Lives Matter movement to condemn police brutality and racism. Protesters also denounced the UK government's plan to expand prison spaces while ignoring the need to build schools and improve education for communities at risk.
I stand confident in my blackness because guess what, my black brothers and sisters? You're kings and you're queens. They took you out of your dynasty. And today, we're telling them, this generation is not playing about. We're not going to stand by while you build prisons for the future instead of schools with adequate education.
Out of that, which was us standing up to support in support of George Floyd, highlighting his horrendous murder, we came. The Million People March was come out the ashes to say that we have to stand up for ourselves. We've got to take account and hold the police to account.
Also, an unusual protest took place in Boston against flu season vaccination. Hundreds of people demonstrated against a new rule mandating flu shots for students in Massachusetts to ease the impact of a possible second wave of the coronavirus. Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker says the shots are needed to keep the healthcare system from getting overwhelmed by coronavirus and seasonal flu. The Massachusetts Department of Public Health says the flu shot are an important step to reduce flu-related illness and the overall impact of respiratory illness during the COVID-19 pandemic.
I'm strongly against opposed vaccination and mandated anything. And it should be a parent's choice whether to vaccinate their kids, especially for the flu shot, which is not proven safe, necessary, or effective. And this affects everybody, not just people in Massachusetts, because Massachusetts will set the precedent for other states. So if we can repeal this mandate, this will help for other states as well.
The repetitive rush to say that it's settled science, in my experience on all these years, has been that there's no such thing as settled science. It's an ongoing process. It's something that we improve upon. It's something that we research. It's something that we try to make better constantly. And just because we put a name to something and call it a vaccine, that doesn't make it settled science.
In Belarus, protesters gathered in Minsk for the third consecutive weekend of rallies against the results of this month's presidential election. The crowds congregated near the presidential palace, calling for President Alexander Lukashenko's resignation on the day the leader celebrated his 66th birthday. Local television showed riot police detaining a number of protesters and using water cannons to disperse crowds. Lukashenko has maintained that these mobilizations are being financed by foreign powers, something protest leaders have admitted to be true. And in Italy, the city of Venice is preparing to host its 77th International Film Festival in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. The world's oldest film festival is set to open on Wednesday and continue until September 12th. Due to the pandemic, this year's edition will see limited seating and thermal scanners for guests.
We know that this year is not at a full speed. We know that there are fewer films. There will be fewer stars. However, it is still Venice Festival. So the fact that there will be a festival even under these conditions is an important message, and it's great to have it.
The festival is essential for the island. Many people work with the festival, and it's an event that brings prestige to the island. It's wonderful and awaited with enthusiasm by everybody, because no matter what, it remains an institution.
Time for a second short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. And Sudan's main rebel alliance has agreed on a peace deal with the government aimed at ending 17 years of conflict. The Sudan Revolutionary Front, an alliance of rebel groups from the western region of Darfur and the southern states of South Kordofan and Blue Nile, inked a peace agreement with the government late on Saturday. A formal signing ceremony is planned for Monday in Juba, the capital of neighboring South Sudan, which has hosted and helped in mediate the long-running talks since late 2019. Sudanese Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok and several ministers flew to Juba on Sunday, where he met South Sudan President Salva Kiir. However, two rebel movements rejected part of the deal, a faction of the Sudan Liberation Movement and a wing of the Sudan's People Liberation Movement North. A delegation from Mali's protest movement, the M5-RFP, met with the country's military rulers known as the National Committee for the Salvation of People. The purpose of the meeting was to establish the basis for collaboration between both sides for a swift transition following the ousting of President Ibrahim Keita. Earlier the day, the so-called Unified movement had expressed its anger at being sidelined from talks between the junta and regional mediators. And as the talks between the regional bloc economic community of West African states and Mali's military junta continue, the ECOWAS leaders have rejected the coup leader proposals of three-year rule, which was reportedly presented during negotiations between the rebel soldiers and West Africa's regional bloc late Sunday. Montenegro held parliamentary elections on Sunday marked by projections that see opposition parties with high possibilities to win after 30 years of the Socialist Democratic Party in power in the southwest European country. Pre-election polls have predicted a tight contest in which the DPS may not win enough seats to govern alone. The vote is marked by a dispute over a law on religious rights that is ostensibly opposed by influential Serbian Orthodox Church. According to the 89% of the data in the sample of Center for Monitoring and Research, three opposition coalitions have won 42 out of 81 seats in the Assembly of Montenegro.
I am using this opportunity to congratulate the overall political and democratic public of Montenegro, and I'm surely using the opportunity to congratulate all participants in this election for the results achieved. Many political subjects in this election achieved a result that is worthy of respect. They achieved new breakthroughs on the Montenegro's political scene and electorate, and that is something the Democratic Party of Socialists always respects, greets and treats as an authentic expression of the democratic will of the people of Montenegro.
Lebanon's President Michel Aoun has called for the proclamation of a secular state during a televised address to mark the upcoming centenary of the Lebanese state.
I believe that only a secular state is capable of protecting and preserving pluralism in true unity. I call for the proclamation of Lebanon as a secular state. I pledge to call for a dialogue that includes sectarian authorities and political leaders in order to reach a formula that is accepted by everyone and that would be embodied in the appropriate constitutional amendments.
At least 12 elephants have been found dead in Zimbabwe's national park. The country's National Parks and Wildlife Management Authority said it has launched an investigation into the case, ruling out that the deaths may have been caused by poachers or cyanide poisoning. These deaths come at a time when neighboring Botswana has also yet to establish the cause of death of 281 elephants in the Okavango Delta. And we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember that you can find this and many other stories at our website, telesurenglish.net. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Luis de Jesus. Thank you for watching.